Well, good day. And today I thought I'd give the program a bit more of an Australian flavour, as you can see. Do you remember these from the? Remember this from the Bush Tucker Man? An enormous hat, and they work very well for keeping the sun off and the rain. There we go. The Bush Tucker Man hat. It's actually a Bush Tucker Man bash of an Akubra sombrero. Okay, I can tell that you found that absolutely riveting. Now, I had a look at Ryan's latest video, the one where he's talking to Barry Finger from Paragon Space Systems, and I'd like to thank Ryan for asking a couple of my questions that were in there. I was thinking the other day, you know, if it wasn't for Ryan and it wasn't for Josh Richards, Mars One would have absolutely no public profile whatsoever. If you Google Mars One, all that ever comes up is some retweeted stuff from weeks or months ago, and either a lot of Josh Richards stuff, and of course Ryan does his videos. That's about it. Okay, well, let's just have a look at the. I made a couple of notes here, as you can tell. They're sort of comprehensive and professional. A couple of things that occurred to me. One was that early on in the piece, they start talking about having one of these life support systems built in the replica habitat on Earth. So they're going to build a habitat on Earth, supposedly, and they're going to put one of these life support systems inside it, so that they can practice repairing it and what have you. But it's very, very difficult to know where to start. I suppose you could actually design something and then say, okay, here's a big box, we've made it work. Now you tell us the size, shape and volume of what you need us to fit it in, and we'll cut it up into lots of little pieces and make those into modules so it all fits. I suppose that's what they've got in mind. Can't really be anything else, can it? Ryan asked Mr. Finger something about what effect 38% gravity might have on the human body. And Mr. Finger said he's not a doctor, medical doctor, he doesn't really know. I think a better question would have been, what effect will 38% gravity have on the life support system processing ability? You know, will the way it processes things change because of the different levels of gravity? Ryan at one point mentioned vitamin D. How would they get vitamin D? Now, if that was me, I'd be looking at getting some LEDs made that would produce UVB as well as visible light, so the skin would synthesize the vitamin D in the normal way. There might be a way of filtering UVB out, having some have a skylight in the head maybe. The sort of glass you'd put in there would filter out everything except a little bit of visible light, and well, visible light, yeah, you want that, and the UVB, and everything else would be filtered out maybe. At 12:24 on Ryan's video, he asked Mr. Finger about the power. The power supply. Where would the power supply come from? What sort of power will be required for a 6-month dust storm? Mr. Finger says, sort of went off at a tangent and started talking about, you know, the size of the solar array and you know, all this sort of stuff, and he starts talking about different power consumptions. And I thought that Paragon had already said that the life support system in the conceptual design study is going to have a continual draw of 15 kilowatts. It's going to be so many kVA per day. Well, if you know that, then you know what the power requirements for that are. So, you know, going off at a tangent like that, it sort of didn't really inspire confidence. I think a much better answer would have been, well, you know, our conceptual design study, we've stated that it's 15 kilowatts, a continual load of 15 kilowatts. Where that comes from is not our department. That's down to the people designing the power system. That would have been a far better answer. He sort of went off, and you could see he was sort of thinking about it, and yeah, that didn't really work. That wasn't overly convincing, I don't think. At 23:34 Ryan asks Mr. Finger about if Paragon has had anything to do with the design or construction, etc., of the life support system in the ISS. And again, Mr. Finger sort of goes off, well, there are people working for Paragon that have done different bits and pieces, and actually I was going to have the laptop on my lap when I did this, because I googled Paragon, and they haven't been up to very much, really. I mean, it's... So anyway, the answer to that question would have been none. So when Ryan asked him at 23:34, has Paragon had anything to do with the design and development of the life support system used on the ISS, the answer should have been no, because Paragon as a company has not had anything to do with that. Paragon supplying some tubing for something, and another bit of stuff for something else, but they're not supplying systems. So that's a bit of fluff there, I thought. There was something else I was going to comment on, but I can't actually remember what the hell it was now. I should have written that down. I probably thought, well, I won't write that down. What are we doing for time? Oh, it's only 6.5 minutes. Because at the time I thought it was quite good. Now, what on earth was that? What on earth was that? I can't recall. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So there we go. Your questions answered? Not really. As I said earlier, thanks for putting them though, Ryan. I think the answers were pretty fluffy, to be perfectly honest. Mr. Finger's in a bit of an awkward position because if Mars One does score some money, he knows that Paragon will score some money out of it, because they wouldn't have a choice but to put some money into that design. Why hasn't a company been asked to look at the power requirements? I think would be a good question. Not for Paragon, of course, if it's nothing to do with them. Might be worth asking Mr. Musk what sort of who he's going to get to do his life support system, and how he expects to power that on Mars. I think Mr. Musk is talking about going to Mars and setting up a colony, isn't he? So it'd be interesting to see his take on it, and who he might use. What was it? The power requirements, and what else was there? Yeah, I'll remember it as soon as I hit stop recording. I'll remember it. But there we go. Yeah, that'd be a good question for Baz, actually, why he hasn't asked anyone to do a conceptual design study for the power system, because without the power system, none of it's going to work. Oh, that's right. That's not what I was thinking of, actually, but something else has just popped into my head, and that's about the hoppers. And Mr. Finger says, well, have a look at hoppers used on large-scale terrestrial mining operations. Yeah, well, one of those would probably swallow half a dozen of your spacecraft. So that's not really a terrific thing to look at. And the other thing too is what happens. No one really knows what happens to the Martian regolith once you've cooked it. So you've cooked it, you've extracted the water. What are you left with? Is it stodgy? How are you going to get rid of it? Is it stodgy? Is it bone dry? Is it dust? Is it going to run on a conveyor? Is it going to be blown down a tube? It's all fluffy stuff. As always, I'll leave you with my standard thing, my standard opinion in that it's all fluff. That none of it's real. Certainly when Mr. Finger starts talking about what was it, 50 missions or something like that, and Ryan says, oh well, after the first few missions, there isn't going to be a mission, Ryan. It should become painfully obvious very soon, probably this year, I would think, because there's not going to be any money to pay the crews, so I think the crews can't be selected in September. And there was a even if I suspect one of the problems as well with this, it's not going to be self-sustainable. Even if it were real, it's not possible for it to be self-sustaining. You know, the spares for the life support system. You know, you're not going to be able to produce them on Mars. It's going to be impossible to take every single spare with you. Oh, that was the other thing. There was a comment that either Ryan or Mr. Finger made, and said, oh yes, well, you could always figure that out once the first crew were there. It was something to do with the life support system, whether you could make parts for it. And I thought, well, yeah, okay, so you've gone to Mars, you've travelled to Mars. Actually, I'm just looking at my watch here because there's a movie coming on the television fairly shortly called Gravity. Now, I've seen it before and it's quite good. But I just want to see Sandra Bullock scantily clad again on the big screen in my home theatre. So I better wrap this up. What the hell was it? I know this is YouTube, but I'd like it to be a little bit better than this. I probably won't redo it, in all honesty. I'll probably just whack this on there. But yeah, okay, so you've gone to Mars. And you've got your life support system there, and you're in your little 6 metre diameter cone. Now you've got to get all this in there, of course, with the hopper. Is the hopper going to go into a 6 metre diameter cone? And the conveyors and the tubes and all this sort of stuff. And you're doing your experiments here, and you find out that you can't actually. The composition of the Martian regolith isn't such that it will allow you to manufacture the parts you require. So it's all very well saying, oh yeah, you know, over tea and biscuits, yeah, we can go there, the first crew or the second crew, and you know, by the time we get these problems, we'll figure out how to make something on Mars to fix it. What if you can't? You know, you're dead, and that only happens once. All right, I'm going to watch a movie because I do like science fiction, and that's probably one of the reasons I keep an eye on Mars One. Have fun all, and I'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching. Give you one last quick look at the hat. Yeah? That hat there. Remember the Bush Tucker Man hat? Back from the 1980s. Looks ridiculous. Very practical.